Some people in America are looking for an easy way out of the 2016 election. That is not surprising. It is not even unwarranted. Unfortunately, this fact has led to some very bad ideas, all the way from Johnny-come-lately third-party dreamers to Pastor Michael Graham's stupid simple plan for a contingent election. The problem is that this contingent election scheme ignores history and it ignores realpolitik. Let me explain his plan briefly. Simply put, it's to convince millions of voters from 7 to 12 various states to vote third party to deny Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump the necessary electoral college votes to win the presidency. This means voting for Jill Stein or Evan McShillen or Gary Johnson. If this happens, and Gary Johnson picks up a couple of electoral college votes, and neither of the other two actually reaches 270 electoral college votes, then a contingent election would take place to determine the winner. This is where we're going to join Graham's plan. Step 5. Here's what he writes. So then Congress votes. ... The catch. Congress. Congress being the House of Representatives in this case. This is the same Congress that Americans trust dead last behind big business, big banks, the justice system, and organized religion. Americans don't trust Congress, begging the question why on earth they would want to trust this same Congress with the most important decision of the next 4 years. They have no reason to. They have given no indication that they would do this. But on with the show. Let me finish Graham's 5th step. Congress votes on the election and can choose from the top 3 electoral vote receivers. There is no indication, there is no evidence, and there is no reason to think that Congress would pick anyone other than the candidate who holds the most electoral college votes. There might be one exception to this. The House could pick Clinton over Trump if Clinton was only slightly behind in electoral college votes. That is just a theory. It is just my theory. The only thing that Graham's plan can do, if it's successful, is to include Gary Johnson in that top 3. Gary Johnson is the fake libertarian running dead last out of the top 3. Paul Joseph Watson has a great video about why Gary Johnson is a fake libertarian. You should watch it. I encourage you to. Graham simply assumes that the House would pick Johnson over Trump or Clinton. He offers no reason for that assessment other than he wants them to. There is not a single reason that he can give to indicate that the House would pick the candidate the least amount of Americans voted for by a huge majority. But history. John Quincy Adams won the 1824 contingent election as the underdog. That's what you might say. That's what Graham said. This being repeated is extremely unlikely. Why? Why did John Quincy Adams win the contingent election in 1825? The answer is simple. Because the political elites in the House of Representatives loved Adams, and they hated his rival, Andrew Jackson. They wanted to deny Jackson the presidency and marginalize him, and they did, at least temporarily. From Graham's perspective, considering his argument, Gary Johnson does not have a majority of allies among the political elites in the House to help him repeat this caper. History does not end there. The election of 1824 and the subsequent contingent election of 1825 caused Andrew Jackson and his allies to form their own party. It's called the Democrat Party. 4 years later, Jackson crushed Adams in the Electoral College in 1828, and then Jackson was reelected again in 1832 for back-to-back victories. Democrats would dominate the presidency until 1856. They lost it only twice in the 28 years, from 1828 to 1856. Remember the political elites who had elected John Quincy Adams and they shunned Jackson and his allies? They belonged to the National Republican Party. These elites lost 28 seats in the House in the very next election in 1828 when Jackson got elected, and they kept losing seats over the next 2 elections. The voters they shunned, the candidate they shunned, the people they disenfranchised and marginalized remembered. And they had the last laugh. The takeaway relating to Graham's scheme is threefold. First, the winner of a contingent election needs a lot of allies in the House, or they need a massive number of voters supporting them. Johnson has neither. Second, representatives who disenfranchise and shun voters face severe consequences when their re-election time comes. For them to ignore Trump or Clinton voters is to ignore their own voters. That is called political suicide. Representatives will try to appease a large number of voters, either Clintons or Trumps, simply because they want to be re-elected. Third, if by some miracle Gary Johnson were elected contingently, it would likely be seen as libertarian disenfranchisement of American voters, i.e. a stolen election, much like Adams' victory. This is an ironic position for libertarians who generally champion the non-aggression principle. For them to use Congress to force America into a coercive presidential relationship. If history is any guide at all, this would be a disaster for the Libertarian Party. These representatives would have to stand up and say, I gave it to someone you didn't vote for. The Libertarians would be perceived as election thieves. You can imagine what subsequent elections might look like. This is why the hand it to the Congress, hand it to the House argument is a feeble line of logic, and Graham's assumption that it will quote-unquote save us from this dumpster fire of an election is pure folly. It has caught on for one reason. America desperately wants out of the consequences of the decision it made for itself during the primaries. Graham's words promise hope for an alternative when in reality there is none. Sorry, America, you don't get off that easy. Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump will be the next president. Next time, in January of 2020, read hard news about your candidates. Read what their positions are and read what their poll numbers are so you're voting for someone who has half a prayer. That will be hard. It will be much harder than taking a morally easy but politically irrelevant and feckless way out, like Graham is suggesting. That's the only way to avoid dumpster fire elections, by being realistically engaged through the entire process and stopping elections like this before they start. Perhaps then we can stop playing board games and rolling the dice with our government and start making active and informed choices like we should have during the primaries.